This week we're going to talk about the Japanese anime Unico, some 60s folk music by Sandy Denny, and the sci-fi novel Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card.
It may not be new, but hopefully it's new to you.
That's right. And this is our first show.
All right. A little bit about ourselves. I am a man of leisure currently, but I have a job starting next week. New to You Show is a brand new project that we hope will bring new stuff to you guys and bring new stuff to us.
Will help enrich your life.
All right. Mary, why don't you say a little bit about yourself?
I'm Mary. I'm the token girl.
Oh man, aren't you? You're so token.
Don't you do something on the internet?
So I'm Mary Varn. I do NPC Comic. It's a web comic. You should check it out, npccomic.com.
That's N as in night, P as in Peter, C as in Charlie.
Because night could be spelled with a K.
Oh yeah, that's true. But whatever, it's N as in night, not spelled with a K.
N as in Nancy.
N as in Nancy, P as in Peter, C as in Charlie, comic.com.
Yeah,
perfect.
Good job.
And I'm Keith Vincent, and I too am a man of leisure. I am currently developing a couple of iPad games for preschoolers, and hopefully developing a wonderful cartoon that everyone can see.
All right.
Soon.
So again, look on our site for links and photos and any more information that we have on the artists, art, and things to read, watch, listen to, play, do on our website at newtoyoushow.com.
Hard as it is to believe, there were certain individuals who were not overjoyed with Unico's wonderful powers. The gods, who thought that they alone had the right to decide when people should be happy.
Wherever that Unico goes, people start laughing and dancing like complete idiots.
Oh, happiness should only be the end result of years of sacrifice and hard labor.
He must be stopped.
I certainly agree.
People are losing all their respect for the gods.
There's only one thing to do.
What?
Unico must die. Oh.
Now, wait a minute.
Oh, dear.
So one of them that we want to talk about is Unico. It is I guess there were a couple of movies. I guess they'd be called movies. I was trying to think of what I would bring to the table, and John and Keith have both. I think of you guys as being way more well-versed in lots of things and have seen...
Oh, that's nice to say.
I mean, it was hard for me to think of a movie or a book or something that I really liked that you guys hadn't already seen or grown up with.
We're all such close pals that we all
Right.
dip in the same pool pretty much when it comes to those things. But you did find something.
Yeah, so I came up with Unico. Yeah, so
something I hadn't seen other than stickers from folders when I was in the 4th grade. But also something beautiful. I'm glad you brought it to my attention.
Yeah. So I knew this. This is based on I'm not sure how you say his name. Osamu Tezuka. Tezuka, yes. So this is one of his characters. He did Astro Boy, and I'm sure John can tell you all about him.
Kimba or Simba the White Lion. Blackjack was another really good
Timba,
one.
isn't it, with a T?
Timba. It's
the White Lion.
Well,
when I was a kid, it was called. It was played on TBS, and I believe it was just called Lion-O or something like.
Really?
The little lion.
Huh.
Yeah, Lion-O's not right, but it was something like that.
Mm-hmm.
What I thought was interesting too is that. So Mary, how old were you?
Lionel.
Lionel was what it's called.
Yeah.
Like the train company.
Yeah.
Weird. So how old were you when you watched this?
So I was probably 6, 7, 5 maybe. It showed on either the Disney Channel or Nickelodeon, child of the 80s. So those were one of the two channels I was always tuned into. And so they had made a dub. This is a Japanese anime, but they made a dub for one of those channels, and I just watched it a lot. There were 2 movies. They were 90 minutes each, I think. So I'll call them movies, but
You watched them both when you were a kid, or okay?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you guys saw it. It's about a cute little unicorn boy.
It's a boy
Yeah,
unicorn.
he's a
by
boy.
the way,
I constantly
not
have to
a girl.
remind myself of that because he's so cute. And in the dub and in the original Japanese, it's obviously a female actress. Yeah. And he.
Well, it's kind of the story of a wandering unicorn that just wants to help people.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of like, the Lone Ranger rides in, saves the day, and rides off.
Right.
It's pretty interesting, the mechanics of how he rides in and rides off. But
Yeah, and so there's two of them, The Fantastic Adventures of Unico, and then I think it's Unico and the Island of Magic. And the first one is The Fantastic Adventures, and that kicks off the whole Unico story about Unico brings happiness to all of the humans that he comes in contact with, and the gods are jealous of that. And they
dumb gods.
try to, they're like Greek cartoony gods, and they have him get whisked away. They want to send him to the Isle of Oblivion, but the West Wind, who they have ordered they've ordered the West Wind to take Unico there. She takes pity on him and constantly shuttles him around the
And
world.
the two, in a way, become fugitives.
Yeah.
Because it's weird too. The gods there's like three styles of character too. There's the Unico animal, like anthropomorphized animals.
Which, now's a good time, while you mention that, to mention that the design of this is the best part of it. I mean, it's just so beautifully designed. Every character looks so super cute to the, Sanrio, I guess, of Hello Kitty fame and
They're the
Bats
ones who
Maru.
produced it,
They produced this animation, so on top of them already being well designed from Tezuka, they are punched up even more by the Sanrio people to make them just off the charts, drippy, saccharine cute.
And then you have the sort of realistic level of it. There's animals that are real. I guess there's almost 4 levels because there's like real animals, and then the environment. That's probably the weakest part is the illustrations of the backgrounds, or maybe it's also the quality that we're looking at it at, but they just are a little muddier and they don't pop as much as the characters. But the compositions are great.
I think that's just the archival aspect of it, because
it's also
Madhouse,
TV.
who did the animation, I mean, they always do beautiful stuff. And
right. Yeah. But you'll have realistic characters and backgrounds in terms of the animals for the most part, except for the more anthropomorphic ones like that. There's a great monkey character design, Unico, and some of them, the cat that he runs into. Then there's the people who are more. They kind of run in. There's like a few sort of realistic people who are, I guess, more
old and crotchety.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess that seems to be an ongoing theme with a lot of this kind of fantastical style anime, because Howl's Moving Castle, all the Ghibli stuff will have the standard looking female characters that look, pretty much like anime.
Male that are...
Yeah, but then when they have the old people, they're very detailed.
They're also really
grotesque.
They get more cartoony.
Yeah.
So
they all have bulbous noses, big moles here, and giant wrinkles and things.
Yeah. But so you look at the gods in this show, and they aren't in the manga. The gods are more like Greek and Roman gods, like it's Eros and Aphrodite and that kind of stuff.
Well, in the manga, it's actually a different story, and I haven't really read much of it yet, but there was recently a Kickstarter to translate the original Unico manga into English, so that's what you guys were flipping through earlier. So I just got that, and it looks like the original story is actually about Venus, the goddess Venus, being jealous of a young, pretty girl who has Unico.
Yeah, I mean, which jives with all the old Greek stories, because so many of them are about the god got jealous and turned him into a cow, and they became all of Europe, that kind of thing.
So in this, the gods, they call them gods, but they look like a troupe of weird, like old men with like goofy features, angels. So it's just all these angels who are basically calling on the West Wind and then later the Night Wind, who look more like Galaxy 999, like severe-faced women who, really, angular and great designs, they call on those guys to sort out, Unico, because they're the ones who should decide who people should be happy or not happy, and not this little like creature.
Who are you, little weird unicorn, to decide who's happy?
The other thing too is like with Tezuka's work, you have like Blackjack it's a doctor with a crazy disfigurement who is the most amazing doctor in the world, but basically he's a gun
This is
for
a manga,
hire
or
doctor.
this is an
This
animation?
is a manga as well.
Okay.
And they made some animation based on it, but it's another Tezuka manga, and it's a similar thing where each sort of story arc is him either being hired on or taking on, pro bono-ish a case as sort of this like freelance surgeon who is the greatest surgeon in the world, but threatens other surgeons so that they like try to keep him out of the establishment. And he always kind of has to be on the move.
Which is funny because surgeons wear masks. It's so weird that him being grotesque.
Well, he's got his like half of his face.
I've
is
seen it. It's like a
cut-
different color.
So
too.
it's like he's like after an accident
Sewn.
has been like sewn up, and his hair is like a shock of white and
Yeah.
black. It's a cool one. And then Astro Boy is a little bit different, but it's another sort of like displaced creature or thing that
just trying to find its way
through and has something to offer the world.
It's like Kung Fu, the movie Kung Fu. It's just a very. It's.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure it's an old episodic way of telling manga and stories. It's just
Well,
like,
the blind-
we got to do another episode.
Right.
Let's just make it a whole new one.
Well, like the Blind Samurai kind of story,
yeah.
where this samurai wanders in,
Zatoichi.
takes pity upon him, and he is able to help people out of their difficulties, and then has to move on.
I think my reference of Kung Fu was just fine. Holt. I don't know why you have to bring the blind swordsman in there.
What about
so much more violent?
Banner's Hulk from TV?
Yeah, there you go. The Hulk.
David Banner.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I really like this. What it also made me think about, and what I was kind of talking about a bit earlier with the age thing, is that we now look at anime and we're like, oh, that's anime. That's a
style.
This is a style, but in the mid-'80s and before, this is a Saturday morning cartoon.
Sure.
And we just didn't know the difference between those two kind of things. It's just a different style of cartoon.
I could kind of tell when I was a kid. I mean, and maybe I'm more sensitive. We're all maybe more sensitive because this is what we do for a living, is animation. But as a kid, I could tell there was something different about the Flying House than Yogi the Bear.
Right.
When I watched when I would watch what was it, G-Force, I knew G-Force was different.
Right.
And I loved it. I knew that was different than G.I. Joe.
Right.
Yeah.
But the thing is, there's like a blurred line, because it's like G.I. Joe, then you get your like Belle and Sebastians and your David the Gnomes. And
Yeah.
these sort of like...
Was David the Gnome anime?
It was done by... I mean, that's the thing. When you have companies who are Korean
Sure.
and...
They were just outsourced
doing
at that time.
And they're also those kind of tales are being told. Like Belle and Sebastian is very,
Flemish, right? Isn't it? Yeah.
But there's a strong that like the Anglophiles in Japan and Korea really resonate with that kind of story. It's the same kind of people who love classical music, and that's why that stuff would get produced, and they would be working on that. The G.I. Joe stuff, that's just straight like outsource. Like, let's get these products made. Kind of stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, it didn't have the stuff. It didn't move like anime because
Right.
it was all overseen by.
But Belle and
Mattel or
Sebastian was
Hasbro.
Japanese, right? The anime.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think it was based off of a
Flemish.
Dutch,
Right.
Dutch or Flemish.
I thought it was based off of an
might be
indie
wrong,
rock band from the late 90s.
Yes, they went back in time.
had a dream of horses. So getting back to Unico, Mary, you watched it when you were a wee lass.
Yeah.
What made you? Did you just continue to always? Did you hang on to those memories and say like, man, one day I'm gonna find out what that was, or did you just see it again and say, oh yeah, I remember that? How did you become reintroduced to it?
Yeah, actually, it's probably from Uniqlo, the Japanese,
yeah.
H&M
The
kind
apparel
of
store,
yeah. They had a Unico T-shirt,
Ah.
and that made me remember. Oh,
Well,
yeah,
Sanrio, I
that.
remember going into the Sanrio store, and you can see Unico. They have
Oh,
Unico
really?
stuff at the Sanrio store
Oh, nice.
as well, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, maybe they're trying to reintroduce him.
Well, that's this was a couple years ago. I don't know if it still is, but
Oh, okay.
years ago. I saw it. But what's the little demon's name again?
Beezle.
Beezle. So that design is the coolest. That little guy he looks like a little Ramones guy with who's naked and has an outie belly button. It's really
Yeah, he's cool. And then in the second movie, what really stuck with me was the villain from the second movie. His name is Lord Karuku, and he makes living puppets out of people, and he's super, super creepy.
Yeah, that's another thing that I find interesting. We were talking about this before we started, but the way that the show Unico or movie or OVA,
or series,
OVA,
whatever.
Is it's an interesting dynamic because you have these super ultra cute characters. Everybody is so maxed out cuteness, and then you have some grotesque old people like I don't know why they always put those in, but at the same time, so you would imagine that it's attracting these really young kids to watch this thing because everyone's so cute, and but then it becomes super violent and super moody at the same time. There's like a very at the end of the first kind of or second segment, first feature.
The Fantastic Adventures.
Yep, of the Fantastic Adventures. They always have to take Unico away, and it's always this really melodramatic, like, goodbye scene that's really sad.
It ends on, there's like 2 acts in this whole thing. You know, it's almost 2 stories that are
in
3
one
acts
feature,
And in the second one, it's like it's this tragic thing where he befriends the creature. He
helps them, makes them
teaches
happy.
him love, and he's like the only friend for this creature on the island of solitude is Unico.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, you gotta go. Just like without being able to say goodbye, without anything. And so his tagline at the end is always saying the character's name, like with plaintive tone and like Beezle as he flies away.
It is the story of my life. Maybe I don't know it, but maybe that's why it resonated with me because I was an Air Force brat, so I would go make friends and then be whisked away.
Billy.
Katie.
But also before that melodrama, there's always a gruesome battle where this unicorn uses its horn to just like have bloody battle with some crazy demon. That's
the thing
fire.
too. So in the second arc, he meets Katie the cat who wants to be a witch. Mm-hmm. And later,
a very selfish
she wants
little
to be
cat.
a human girl and a witch.
Right. And I don't know if it's the way that they translate or just the story structure. Story structure is very like sort of like, and to become a witch, I need to become a girl first. and Unico's powers kind of work that way too, where he's like, he can turn into a flying miniature version of himself when he needs to.
Right.
And his horn can get long when it needs to.
Well, no. He becomes a fine version of himself when he is loved and...
Right,
but
I guess what I'm talking about.
He flew when he grew the little wings.
Oh, the little version,
He becomes like fairy version of himself. And that's pretty different. Like, that's a sort of like, we just add this on as we go. But Katie actually makes me like her design as a girl, but also as a cat makes me think of Kiki's Delivery Service with that sort of like black cat, red bow, witch girl kind of thing.
Well, I will say that the cat version of Katie, is it?
Yeah.
Is one of the best cat designs I've ever seen in cartoons. It is really, really neat.
And,
I mean, it's just
and the eyes
very
are expressive, but still just
looking.
being little dashes.
I mean, it creates new ways to be expressive within this very restrictive design, but it's just very clever. So nice looking.
So Katie, as a girl, after some trials and tribulations, is now a good girl, blah, blah, blah. But then
no, you're skipping the part where she's selfish, so Unico's like, sorry, I gotta turn you back.
I don't like you anymore.
I don't like you because you're selfish, and now your powers, and now you gotta go back to being a human. Sorry about that. And then that's when she, as a cat, becomes selfless and turns back into a human. So then that's when we get to the part.
That's when Baron the Ghost, who I call Baron Roofies, shows up. But he's just so, his voice is so weird, and he's so weird, and his entrance is fantastic.
Yeah.
He's got these red eyes, and they always just do like extreme close-ups, so you just see the top of his nose and his eyes, and then because of the cropping, you just see the like the two edges closest to his nose, and he talks like Katie.
Yeah, he's a very
Who was singing that wonderful song?
What a beautiful voice.
yeah, he's tall, dark, and handsome, and he gets her drunk.
Yeah, and he rides a
So
stallion.
it was a good life lesson for me
exactly.
to be aware
Yeah, no
of.
kidding.
But he the best line for him, and my favorite line in that whole thing, is when she's like, "What is your name?" And she's like, "I'm Katie." Oh, Katie, what a childish name. It's so weird in delivery, just a weird line.
Peculiar name.
No,
yeah,
he said childish though
Childish,
too. He did.
Yeah, and then she's just, "What a peculiar girl," he says later
Yeah.
after he's like, because the thing is, it's really strange. Like basically, he drugs her so that she just like walks to his house.
Well, let's talk about how he drugs her too. So he's going through the woods at midnight, and his eyes light up. He's riding his horse, and suddenly acorns and berries
start glowing.
They glow, and all the animals eat them and become enthralled to him. And that's also how she eats
one and
some of
becomes
the berries
enthralled, too.
and becomes enthralled to him as well.
Right.
So
So then-
all the collateral damage of squirrels and deer, just to get the one girl kind of
It's wild, and
intoxicated.
it's not clear like why he needs to. And then like he gets her to his place, and then he's like, "Here, have a drink," and he drops another berry in it, and it dissolves. And it's like,
As if
wait,
she wasn't already
right.
in his
And
control.
then
Right.
she drinks like an entire bottle of wine after that. So you're not sure what the first, besides just getting her there, you don't know what the first berry was supposed to do. The second berry has no real purpose because she drank a whole bottle of wine anyways. Then he's like, she passes out and he puts her to bed. And that's where he's like, picks her up, like, "What a peculiar girl." He puts her in bed and goes, "Sweet dreams, Katie. They'll be the last you ever have," or something like basically, you're gonna die. But there's no.
We have no idea
You
why.
don't know
he
why
wants to
how.
kill her.
Yeah, it's just like she's gonna die, and then
because
has
he's
to
bad,
fight.
because
Yeah,
he's
a
evil,
bad
and
guy.
that's
'cause-
all.
And listen, little girls out there in the world, you need to know that this is what some guys do.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. So it's a good one. The interesting thing too is that it's very economical. The visual effects are great. There's some weird, like they do these weird waves on Beazle's Island that are just like video compositing of smoke roiling. Really like interesting sort of out of place stuff. The effects during the battle fight at the boss fight at the end
Always
is really
great
cool.
with those guys.
But they also economize by it's usually just two characters on screen, or one or none with some audio. Like they keep it pretty enclosed, and there's not tons and tons. They definitely were aware, I think, of their production scale. So,
But well, before we go too much further, I wanted to also let you guys know that this isn't like when we suggest this. Well, when Mary suggests it, I watched it. I enjoyed it based on a lot of the design. The voices are pretty terrible, and
Yeah, I
I
wanna
gotta
talk
say
about
this
that a
the
little bit.
storyline's just weird. But I liked it on a because it's so weird. You know, because this guy comes out. So it is. There's a little kitsch aspect to it, and a
Right.
little bit of there's a little bit of nostalgia of that style. I think we can all say that when we first discovered anime or you know, kind of more grown up animation, it looked like that. And,
Yeah.
and
Right.
that part of that is part of that is why I was really drawn to it.
Right.
But I don't want you to come out expecting Citizen Kane and go like, well, that was kind of silly.
right,
So,
this is not.
Yeah,
and
the
also,
plot's pretty dumb.
right,
Yeah.
this is not a Studio Ghibli movie either. Like it's not.
well, even some of those
Right.
are kind of silly.
Right.
So.
But I
But
think
I
I think
guess it's-
bronies would like it.
oh
Yeah,
yeah,
definitely.
all you bronies out there,
Yeah,
watch
that's a good
Unico.
one. And I'll speak to the dubbing. I've watched a lot of animation. And,
We know people who dub
Yeah.
stuff for a living.
and this stuff's actually pretty decent. Like there are some voices out there that grate on me when it's an
Yeah.
American dub. These ones, they sit well. It might just be the
Unico's voice is
Oh, you don't
grates
like
on
that
me big time.
But
yeah.
it's maybe it's the processing of the VHS or something. It seems a
could
little
be.
softer to me than it just something sits better for me in this process in this.
Then well, so give us the worst case scenario of a bad dub that you were just like can't do it.
I don't know. I mean, usually I'll just turn them all off anyways.
Sure,
So, I guess it's similar to reading the book before the movie, where if I've watched it
Sure.
in Japanese and then I go to
Which
watch
you
it,
usually have.
right? Then it's then I'm just like, no good.
Yeah, but I mean, so I would just say in comparison to Kiki's Delivery Service, something we mentioned earlier.
Oh, Kiki's
this is terrible voice wise compared to that, I think.
But if you listen to the subtitled version on YouTube, I think the Unico voice is pretty similar to it's
good.
you know it's
Right,
it's kind of
it's
faithful. Yeah.
Faithful in its gratingness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And its gratitude.
And they do. I thought they do a great job with the Lord Karuku villain in the second one. I think they may have just had more money for that one because they go a little more nuts with the effects animation. They do some Fantasia
cool
dance sequences and.
Well, it's funny because a lot of the imagery reminds me of Fantasia with the little flying. You know, in Fantasia, they have the little flying unicorns
right.
and the gods and all that in that one section of Fantasia.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's I like this pick. It was fun to watch.
Yeah,
and I really enjoyed.
Good choice, Mary. And it's the same thing I'm going to say to Holt with his musical selection. Is like I don't know how I ever missed it. So I'm glad you guys remedied that for me.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And so, one more time. It's called Unico.
Yeah, that's Unico.
And,
Unico.
And what is this? The first feature? It's two
The Fantastic
kind of
Adventures of Unico and Unico and the Island of Magic, I believe.
Right.
A white horse with wings? Then he was a unicorn, without a doubt. I've heard tales of such a little unicorn who has the wonderful gift of bringing happiness to any life he touches. But they say the little unicorn is forbidden to stay for long with those he has made happy.
What? What are you saying? I can't believe that! I won't let him go! I won't!
Unico! Don't call for him, my child. It won't do.
It's a lesson too late for the learning. Made of sand, made of sand. In the winking of an eye, my soul is turning. In your hand, in your hand. Are you going away with no word of farewell? Will there be not a trace left behind? I could have loved you better, didn't mean to.
So my contribution this week is an album that I discovered back, I think, in college. I picked it up in 70. No, it was in 78. I was born in 78. No, it was 90. I guess 97. Probably 97 that I picked it up at a used DVD or used CD and music store.
You call it Gold Nugget?
Not Gold Nugget. It was the other one that was above
Or
the
was it
Chinese
Gold
food
Nuggets?
and pizza place. And that building burned down. It was in Kenmore Square.
I didn't know there was a record store.
Yeah, there was
there.
a record store right there.
Right by the Rat.
Yep.
Right by the Rat.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just above there, basically, I think that the colleges burned it down to buy that whole.
We're talking
block or
about
whatever.
Boston,
Yeah,
where
so that's in Boston.
John and
Yeah.
Keith went to school
Yeah,
together.
I went to college in Boston. So I picked that up there. I was in this. I've always been sort of interested in Old English and Scottish folk ballads, and there was a sort of a resurgence
Because
at
they're
that
so
point
body.
in time. Yeah,
And he loves sailor
exactly.
talk.
Some of it came from like reading comics. There were like Neil Gaiman and some other guys were drawing from Alan Moore, drawing
Del Boy,
from exactly.
Mike Mignola stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, so they were drawing from those references. They were drawing from Old English ballads and Scottish ballads, and so there was a period of time during the sort of folk Renaissance or the beginning of folk music or whatever that in British folk they were not just like we were, a lot of our musicians were bringing American folk music in. These guys were bringing Scottish and English folk music in. But the other thing too is that in Appalachias here you had one of the strongest sources of Scottish and English folk ballads up in the mountains there where
Some
they
of
had
the
oral traditions.
more original, unadulterated.
Yep.
What's a movie called Songbird?
Yeah, Songbird, where
it's
it's
based
about-
on a true story about these people who found out that some of the song structures that had just been passed down from family to family in the Appalachians were more true to the original
pure
language,
versions.
than the stuff that was still there. Oh, so let's
Some of
talk
this
about
stuff.
it. It's Sandy Denny.
Sandy Denny. So she's that's it. So the album is the original Sandy Denny. This is the first album that she cut with Saga Records back in 67 or 66. Like, this was her first album. And
So this is after Bob Dylan, 63.
Yep.
This is after Joan Baez. This is after this is like folk music had pretty much peaked in America, but it was but in England it was still going strong, and they were still cussing at Bob Dylan.
Right. I mean, there was
going
It's
electric.
a year before the current season of Mad Men.
Right.
But so you listened to you listened to this and was like, this is it, I gotta own this record.
Yeah.
Or
Well,
what happened?
Actually, the pathway for that was I picked up Fairport Convention's Legion Leaf, which was they're another. She worked with them a couple of years after cutting this record. They're
a lot of people
going.
might have already heard of Fairport Convention. Yeah.
So in Legion Leaf, and that album is almost entirely folk ballads.
Oh.
And one of the tracks from this album, the which track is it? False Bride, I think. No, it's not on that one. But basically, False Bride might be on Legion Leaf. You can check that for yourselves. But it's in the same thing. But it's all folk ballads, and she's the singer on most of the tracks, and it's really great. Like another great album. And so I just tried to find more of her, this sort of like smoky, rich voice.
Well, that's actually an example. One of the examples that I wanted to bring when I started talking about it is, Holt and I John Holt and I have known each other for a really long time. So when he said, the first one I want to do is some British folk person, and so I was like, oh man, not that I don't trust him, but I mean, when I think of British folk songs, it's that song, the last was it been on the road so long, which is what the last track on that record, right? That's what I think of when I think of British folk. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's the male singer in there, which his name's Alex Campbell, but it just sounds like Billy Bragg, this kind of hollow back of your voice kind of singing, very very earnest, and a lot of people like that. It's great, but I just can't deal with it. But what I was happy for is just how amazing the rest of this record is. I mean, and not just, I mean, well, first of all, her voice is off the charts. Just one of the most beautiful voices you'll hear. I mean, very, very similar Joni Mitchell, and people are gonna, you can write me bad letters if you want or not, but I think her voice is better than Joan Baez. I just love it. They're very similar in the style that they sing, but Sandy Denny's just, I feel like she's got control over her voice that's unparalleled. Joni Mitchell, though, I'm not going to say she's better than Joni Mitchell. That's couldn't do that. Along those lines, the song that really stuck out to me was "You Never Wanted Me." I just think that was just, I mean, the melody, and on this record, not only is her voice great, but the bass on it is it's just so nice and bouncy. It's when you think of folk music, you usually think of the harmonica and the one single guitar, but they really produced this record beautifully. There's just so much great musicianship on it, other than her voice. But I mean, her voice is great. I grew up. My mother is a folkie since way back. She grew up in the contemporary of she grew up during the folk, revival, and she's probably one of the biggest Bob Dylan fans you'll ever meet. One of the biggest Pete Seeger fans. So growing up, those were the records I listened to as a kid. From my mom's side, my dad had a different has instilled in me a different set of tastes. But so Peter, Paul and Mary is one of the first records I ever memorized. Wow. The one with Puff the Magic Dragon on it, and so I have a certain idea of what folk's supposed to sound like. So when I hear this, it's very refreshing. I was glad to hear it, and golly, Sandy Denny, she sure can sing.
Yeah, she's.
I mean, golly, she's just got a voice, and her her vibrato is so well controlled. She just sings circles around everybody. It's just great. So thanks, Holt, for that.
Yeah.
What do you think, Mary?
I think it's pretty. I live with John Holt because he's my boyfriend, so I've heard it before. But yeah, it's pretty. I discovered Joni Mitchell in college and loved her, so I think that other than, I mean, obviously they're both folksy type women singers from that time. There's probably not many more parallels than that, but I think it's pretty different. The songs.
Well, I would say that there are some similarities in that. The thing that I always liked about Joni was that her melodies are amazing. You know, I mean, she comes from a folk tradition. She sings in that style, but her melodies are just very different than the standard folk songs. And I feel like she must have been inspired by some of this European stuff that wasn't all the way into the folk canon when she was coming up.
Was Joni Mitchell making stuff after Sandy Denny?
Yeah, well, she still does, but I think they're pretty contemporary.
Yeah, so let me give you a little background.
The early 70s on Joni peaked in the early 70s, I think, didn't she?
Court and Spark and Blue?
I'm not sure. Holt's
I don't know.
more familiar with.
I don't know the back. I know. Well, for Denny's background, I know she started in like '66. That's really when her career, like she first played. You know, she recorded this album around then, like late '66, '67, and she died in '78.
What?
She fell down. So she only had to.
She fell down.
Yeah, she got drunk and fell downstairs.
Oh, that's terrible.
But she was pretty like messed up by the end or whatever. She had some substance abuse issues and had a serious fall and died. But her career was about 12 years. She only recorded 5 albums total. This one, 5 solo albums. This one, and then her last one was in the works when she passed away. Oh, wow. And they released that in '98.
Just like Biggie.
Yeah, her big success. There's a track that she wrote in '68 called "Who Knows Where the Time Goes." And
she wrote it.
She wrote that one, and it's Fairport covered it with her when she was with them in '68, '69. But Judy Collins brought it to the U.S. and it's one of her heavy. It's one of the heaviest covered songs, like in terms of like different versions and sheet music and all that stuff. But that's her.
What
most
is the song
called? Who Knows Where the Time Goes.
Oh, great.
Like there's a great Cat Power cover. Of course there's a Cat Power cover, but so there's a version of it out.
So I noticed that this album is called The Original Sandy Denny, but she didn't write any of it, so it's not so original,
right?
Is it?
Well, originally it was called Sandy Denny. It was just Sandy Denny.
I mean, the first big Bob Dylan release in '63. It was all covers except I believe one song. I think all of them were traditional songs, and then "Song for Woody" I believe was the only original. I might be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it was at least a majority of the songs were classic folk songs.
It was released. So it was Sandy Denny and Saga. It was considered like the Saga Sandy Denny thing for a long time. In '78, they released it as original recordings, and then it was just called Original Sandy Denny, and they've since remastered most of her stuff.
Oh, it was original because it was the original recording instead of the
original, right? So
it was just a semantics thing,
right? And it was also her first solo album, so it's the original Sandy Denny, and so that's that album.
So that's beautifully sung, Sandy Denny. Good job, Holt. And again, I don't know how I ever missed her.
She's amazing. Again, short period of time. She worked with some great people. She was actually sang with Led Zeppelin on a track. She was backup vocals for them. But yeah, she's one of those kind of few people who doesn't have a huge impact. Again, like one big song that sort of got out and played by a lot of big people. But it's sort of, she was, like you said, she was on the tail of that folk tradition, and she was more in that English folk world a little bit more.
It's on Rdio.
Yep.
Maybe it's on Spotify. I don't know. I'm not a Spotify
I don't know if
subscriber.
it's on Spotify.
I know most of her songs are on YouTube. I heard a bunch on there.
Yep, there's a lot of those. So Sandy Denny, the original Sandy Denny from Saga Records, recorded 66, 67, released 78, and more recently remastered and released.
I once loved a lass, and I loved her so well, and I hated all of us who spoke of her ill. And now she's rewarded me well for my love, for she's gone and she's wed another. And I saw my love up to the church go, with bride and bridesmaidens she made a fine show. And I followed on with my heart full of woe, for she's gone and she's wed another. I saw my love as she sat down to dine. I sat down beside her.
I've watched through his eyes. I've listened through his ears, and I tell you, he's the one. Or at least as close as we're going to get.
That's what you said about the brother.
The brother tested out impossible. For other reasons. Nothing to do with his ability.
Yeah, well, same with the sister. And there are doubts about him. He's too malleable, too willing to submerge himself in someone else's will.
Not if the other person is his enemy.
So what do? Surround him with enemies all the time?
If we have to.
I thought you said you liked this kid.
If the buggers get him, they'll make me look like his favorite uncle.
All right. We're saving the world after all, so take him.
Well, the show is to try to this particular show is to try to say, hey, these are things that we like, and each of us is supposed to bring to the table a little insight into the things that each of us, our personal tastes. And so because of that, I have selected a book that each of us were supposed to bring a form of media, and I was told to bring a book. And that was a pretty difficult decision to make. I'm a big fan of Vonnegut, and I thought I was going to do a Kurt Vonnegut book. I'm a big fan of one of my all-time favorite books is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I can also discuss at length anytime anybody wants to. But this time I figured there are a lot of reasons to discuss this book, which is called Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card. There's a movie that's going to be coming out, I suppose early next year.
I think this year.
Maybe this year. Harrison Ford's in it.
Harrison Ford's in it.
And it's gonna be a big blockbuster.
Abigail Breslin.
Oh, good.
Haley, what's her face from True Grit.
So Ender's Game was first published in 1985, and as a novel, but it was based on a short story that Card wrote in a magazine or a collection of stories called The Analog of Science Fiction and Fact in 1977. And to imagine that just on a creative level, to imagine that this guy was kicking around this story from the 70s, 77, right, still like chipping away at the story until the 80s. I just love that as an artist who works on things for a really long time. I think that's really neat. And it was already published. Right. So for most people, they'd be like, well, I published that. That's done. But I love that he was like, no, there's more to this. I feel like there's a bigger thing. I like, too, that
regardless of the fact that it's sort of like 8 years of working it up into a novel.
Well, we don't know how long he spent on it.
I mean, until, from when publication of the short story till publication of the novel, there's an 8-year gap there. But that's time or whatever. So in that course of time, it still retains a fresh, like this seems like a first book in all the right ways.
Yeah.
Like it seems, compared to the later books in the series, this is one of the lighter, faster, fresher reads that can be taught young adult, but still be accessible to adults.
Yeah.
And is just a great lightning read that's still challenging and makes you think, and at the same time
well crafted, super well crafted as well. Well, first of all, let me just state that Orson Scott Card is kind of, I guess he's under hot water right now because something to do with he said some stuff.
There's some controversy.
He's supposed to be an anti-Semite and anti-homo.
Yeah,
He's supposed to be homophobic.
Which is not. I absolutely do not support any of that, and so nothing I say about this book should seem like I'm pro any of that.
Yeah,
but
none of that comes through in the book.
Absolutely not. In fact, his books are very much about inclusiveness.
Yeah.
About this book and the books that followed in this series and the series, which is kind of hard to describe. He wrote a story from the point of view of this one child, and then some years later and where the child goes after the main story are the subsequent books. But then some years later, he rewrote the first story, but from the point of view of another kid, which I think is really cool. It's really neat it's really rare for the author themselves to do that instead of some other author to do it 100 years later.
And if you only read 2 books in the series, reading Ender's Game, this first book, and
then Ender's Shadow,
which is it's a parallel book. It follows a small character.
It's the same
in
exact
the
story, except from another point of view, from another character. Right. And honestly, that would be my recommendation. I kind of like the other books. They're okay, but they're not nearly the same caliber as Ender's Game and Ender's Shadow. So that's my recommendation to you. Just read those 2. But I mean, if you're curious, you should read the others. Speaker of the Dead. In the Enders line, there's Speaker of the Dead. What comes after that, John? Do you know?
Xenocide.
Yeah, Xenocide. That's right.
It just goes on there. There's a great audiobook, and when they were putting out the audiobook, it was a quintet, series, not counting Bean series.
Yeah,
it was a quintet, and then since then I think he's written at least 1, if not 2 more books.
Well, the Bean there are at least 3 books in the Bean books. There might be 4.
Well, that's separate, but just within the
I guess we should have done some homework.
Within the Ender books alone, I think there are like 5 or 6 books now.
Yeah, but honestly, Ender's Game is the jewel in the crown. It's really succinct on its own. In fact, it stands alone.
You don't need anything else.
I don't even appreciate the other books nearly as much. But what it does is you should read it. Because it's good, and it'll take care of it way better than me. But it chronicles the story of Andrew Wiggins, who's called Ender by his friends, and decides, hey, I like being called Ender better. But the name becomes kind of important toward the end of the book. It chronicles him as he's being primed to be the next big leader in the Earth's attack force that will eventually destroy. That is poised to go to war against this other, almost unseen foe that has the Earth has been at war with for the past. What do you think? Well, it's in the future.
It's probably like 20 or 30 years.
Yeah,
It's a long time. So basically, it's
70 years.
70 years. Oh wow. Okay, so it's basically
Earth has been at war with these creatures that just came. Buggers. They're called formics scientifically, but everyone just calls them buggers, which I think is another great thing about this book, in that it without seeming cheesy creates its own language, its own slang, and most of it is created because we follow this group of children so much. It sounds like children making up their own slang, their own language, and I think that is handled masterfully. He just nails the way that these kids talk to themselves. So it's not only a matter of him. It's not only a matter of him writing the story of children in a group trying to sound like the voice of a child, but it's the sound of a super genius child in a community of other super genius children. How do they play together?
Right.
How do they communicate? What kind of slang do they use? It's just very well, obviously very well handled, and he nailed it. And I hope some of that comes through in the movie. I kind of feel like they're going to tone a lot of that down simply because if you were to see some of the things and hear some of the things that these children do to one another, visually, if you're going to see it, it's very different than reading it, I think.
Right.
And which will be a shame, because I really believe that children in this situation would probably act pretty closely to the way he
So
he writes them.
we've all read this book, and we all know that the children in the book are much younger than how they're cast in the movie.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's my big concern in the film. In the book, your protagonist is 6 years old when it starts.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where it begins. And the passage of time throughout the book,
it's only 6 years.
He stays very young.
Yeah. I believe at the end he's 12 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's there's not much else time-wise, and the
maybe
idea
younger. Maybe he doesn't even get to be 12.
It's like 11 and 11.
Yeah,
and a half
because
or 12.
in the timeline of the school, they're supposed to stay there for 6 years, but I think maybe he's fast tracked.
Yeah, he does get.
Yeah,
fast
he's super fast tracked.
He
So take that back.
Early.
He's not even 12. He's super young, maybe 10.
So they're the best part about not just the language and the structure of how the kids talk, and the reason why I hope that I had hoped that they had made this animated using CG.
Well, John and I have talked about this for years. I would love to have seen this in the style of the Incredibles.
Yeah,
I would love to have seen this be a fully 3D thing, because then these characters could act anywhere they want. People wouldn't feel so I don't know, as connected to them if they were animated. But it would be animated for adults. I think it would have been.
I mean,
wonderful.
That's why I don't understand. This is the kind of movie that Polar Express technology would be used for. I mean,
yeah, but I couldn't stand to see that mocap style. I mean, when has it ever worked?
But
right?
I'd rather. That's for me. This is where it would work. It's a level of realism that is a little like futuristic. Yes, I can see them being a little more stylized, but still having these children be very young and thinking and talking the way they do. It's the best part about it for me is that you go in saying we shouldn't underestimate children and their thought processes, because at a certain point they're young adults without as much knowledge or experience, and that doesn't mean that their emotions and their thought processes aren't
valid,
complicated, and that the way they think about things can't be complicated. Just because they can't explain them to you doesn't mean that's not the case. And what this character and these characters in these things, these are genius children through breeding and nurture, have sort of come into being, so they are able to express themselves, and we are hearing them express themselves. But
they're pushed to the brink, physically, emotionally, mentally. I mean, they're supposed to be on the edge. They're being taught to deal with war at a very young age, and it's very, very interesting. I think.
When they first cast the movie, I thought, well, yeah, I mean, they just can't get a really little kid to do this. But then I saw the first season of Game of Thrones, and I don't know if Bran and Arya were as young as 6, but they're younger than these like teenagers.
Yeah,
right.
And that I was just
they could have
they could have done it.
I mean, it's pretty heavy though. A 6-year-old kid. Yes, they can cast an older kid who might look that age or whatever. Yeah, they can have a 6-year-old kid, but or cast a slightly older kid who looks 6 or so, but I don't know if they can bring the range, because there's a lot. Ender's a pretty quiet and inside kid for the most part, and so there's a lot of he's gonna be the focus.
We'll see. I mean, we're talking about the book. We all we can do is hope about the movie,
right?
And I just know that no matter what, the book is in my opinion a modern sci-fi masterpiece. And any caveats you want to add to that, I totally understand. But as far as I'm concerned, you're not going to find a better sci-fi book from this period than this. It's just top notch.
It's interesting too. He brings Card sort of. It's 85, and he is putting the internet out there in this whole system of forums and this whole system of an internet with a dialogue.
Absolutely.
It's another one of those where science fiction guys are thinking of all these ideas, and one of them hits the mark.
It's perfect. I mean, the things that he describes as the future involving the internet, chat forums, the way people use email, the way kids use laptops and like iPad tablets. It's amazing. It's like a prophet. I mean, the guy nailed it perfectly, which it's hard to imagine that in 1985 this guy knew that these things were going to happen. It's pretty fascinating.
Yeah. And he deals with like relativity in the way that a lot of science fiction books, I think, just say, like, oh, that's not a thing.
Yeah, in a very actually approachable way. You read it and it makes relativity make sense a little bit. Right. When you read, there's a specific part of it that you read it and you're like, oh, that's easy. That's what relativity is. I wish more science teachers could describe it so simply.
Yeah, what's kind of, I mean, there are a couple concepts that are the science fiction part, the more sort of like, here's a magical element that maybe science could figure out one day, that are in place, but they're so small to the rest of the story, or they're devices that don't seem shoehorned. And because there are so many things that work and are on, this book, I think, stays relevant.
Well, I think what you're talking about is the Ansible, right?
The Ansible and Phylotic, that like Phylotic strand, which is also the Ansible. He talks about those in the later books, I guess.
think that, I don't know what he says in the other books, but the Ansible is based on physics,
it's
on real physics, entangled particles,
right? But there's
entangled atoms and entangled particles.
He gets into it a little differently,
okay,
and he uses it in this book a little. Like his thought processes on it is a little more magical, I think, than science is bearing out right now. Who knows? Maybe. And there's also gravity manipulation, which.
Well, I love that in the book he even says something like, "Well, once we saw that it was possible for something to do it, we knew that we could do it," which I thought was really interesting. Is like. As humans, we saw that these things were able to communicate at fast as light speeds across vast distances. I just love that from a science point of view, that statement, I think, is totally, is very accurate. I mean, if scientists saw that, oh, this is possible, now we just got to figure out how. I just love that as a concept.
Yeah, the great thing too is every character has their own voice. And really comes out of the tapestry. Everyone
very well developed as well. Like there's not a throwaway character that I can think of in the whole book.
It is told third person limited, and it's mostly from Ender's point of view, but it is from a few other characters like his sister Valentine.
Well, structurally too, they start each chapter starts with almost the teachers or the watchers who are handling these kids, which I think is a really smart structure. It kind of says it gives you a little kind of sneak preview about what's going to happen in the chapter, but it tells you what these people are looking for, and then you see it from his point of from the children's point of view. And I think that was a really master stroke. It's very smart.
And it also shows too that yes, the teachers have more information, and yes, they're older, but that doesn't really make them smarter or inherently more aware.
They're the ones that will say that too in the book.
And it's
they
great.
Say things
they're just
like that.
they're admitting that not just these kids are smarter than them, but they're just as in the dark. They're just doing their damnedest to get done what they need to get done, and there's not much else they can do. And these kids basically just don't know as much as these guys in terms of they don't have all the cameras everywhere.
Right.
And that's the only difference between that and. Part of their strategy is that blackout of information to get what they need done. But, they're more afraid of the people that they're manipulating than what they're, and what will happen to them if they fail.
Enemies, that are in space. Well, I mean, the whole book culminates with a great twist at the end. We've been kind of, we talked about for a little while how to handle the twist and the the spoiler, and I think you should just check it out. It's very clever. It's very well put together, and I mean, just crafted, just a well-crafted, well-oiled machine.
Yeah, and if you like audiobooks, I really recommend the audio version is great. I read the book in real paper, pre-ebook years ago, and then I recently listened to the audiobook, and it's very well done.
Yeah, I think, didn't you say the audiobook that you listened to had almost several characters reading different parts?
Yes, it has 2 or 3 or 4, even maybe different actors. It's a little bit, for my taste, a little bit overacted in parts for an audio
book. A little too dramatic.
But only in the teacher parts we were talking about.
Yeah, okay.
But it's like a radio play.
A little bit, yeah. They don't do sound effects or anything.
But it's called Ender's Game, written by Orson Scott Card. That's Keith Vincent's recommendation for this week. Wonderful book, and I hope you like it. And gosh, fingers crossed, and we hope the movie's good.
I need you to be clever, Bean. I need you to think of solutions to problems we haven't seen yet. I want you to try things that no one has ever tried because they're absolutely stupid. Why me? Because even though there are some better soldiers than you in Dragon Army, not many, but some, there's nobody who can think better and faster than you. Bean said nothing.
Goes take a shower, comb brush the head. His clothes well hung in, ironed in the closet. On the dresser sits everything he'll need for the day: a wristwatch, glasses, and at least $20. A picture of his family with their faces scribbled out.
Such a question, there are many possible answers.
NewToYouShow.com is brought to you this week by Unico.
The letter U.
Yeah, Unico. By Sanrio, 1983, and Osamu Tezuka is the originator of that character. The original Sandy Denny was our album this week, with Sandy Denny as the artist, and Ender's Game by Orson Scott Card was our book. So from John Holt,
Mary Varn,
and Keith Vincent,
this was New to You.
And I hope you have a great week. Thanks for listening.
I like looking like trash. I want to help others outside of that bubble they trap their head in. But me talking to you is like racing towards an end. And yes, I'll speak to myself for the rest of my time left. It's a little hard to talk when you keep smothering each breath. Yes, I've been close to death more times than you can count, with no stage to be on. I feel I'm just left out taking them.